Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Candidates Forum for the 2023 first ever election of the new Capital Regional District's Local Community Commission for Salt Spring Island. Tonight's event is brought to you collaboratively by Transition Salt Spring Island Farmland Trust, and Island Pathways. This event is being recorded. Your video and audio will be turned off for the entire session due to the number participating. Your video and audio will be turned off for the entire session due to the number of people participating. If you are having technical difficulties, you can chat with us directly. The chat window is on the bottom of your desktop screen. It may be in different locations on other devices. So my name is Brian Young, and I'm the chair of the board of Transition Salt Spring. I will be your co-host tonight, along with my wonderful colleague, Sheila Doby, who's the co-chair of the Salt Spring Island Farmland Trust. Backstage managing the Zoom interface for all of us tonight is Erin Ann Harper. She's our administrative and data management lead. Before we get going tonight, I'd like to introduce my colleague more properly, who will also give a land acknowledgement.
It's a pleasure to be with you tonight, and thanks to the candidates participating in this candidates forum. And on behalf of all of us, thank you for your interest in the health and well-being of Salt Spring Island. Tonight, Brian and I are representing the three partners producing tonight's event. Bob Mackay, the president of the Island's Pathways, is also a key partner, and we'd like to really thank him and his team for their generous participation, making this candidates meeting a reality. To get going in a good way tonight, I would like to give a brief land acknowledgement. If we're all participating from the place known as Salt Spring Island, then we're on the unceded territories of the Hokominium and the Sinchothan speaking people. Taking this to heart, I acknowledge the tremendous amount of work needed to repair the centuries of damage caused by this and other actions connected to this disregard. We're being invited by the first people of this land to understand what is the foundation in reconciliation, and I encourage all of you to read the summary report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Erin Ann is placing that link in the chat window if you'd like to pursue that further. Hi, Sekwa. Hi, Chika. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. And that chat window is going to be really important tonight, folks. And it's at the bottom of the screen. It's going to be where we're going to be putting a lot of information for you. So thank you, Sheila. Before we begin, we would also like to acknowledge Positively Forward, with whom we began the journey to producing tonight's broadcast. The original four partners, which did include Positively Forward, came together because we felt it is important for island groups to work together to address the challenges that our island is facing. 2 weeks ago, the four groups began to have serious discussions about Positively Forward's participation in tonight's broadcast. Last week, we decided together, with much respect, that Positively Forward would withdraw from this collaboration. The three remaining partners have chosen a different path for engaging Salt Springers in this broadcast, and that is to remain neutral as to the candidates while remaining opinionated regarding the issues that are central to our respective missions. As many of you know, Positively Forward is endorsing candidates, and this is well within their legal rights to do so. And in this country, people and organizations are entitled to this kind of participation in politics. However, all four groups felt equally that Positively Forward's further participation as a registered third-party sponsor would call into question the neutrality of this event, which is why they're no longer participating. We'd like to thank them for their early participation in this initiative and for the respectful discussion we engaged in that we hope characterizes all aspects of this campaign. The goal of the remaining three partners here tonight is to give you, the voter, access to information from the candidates, not from us, on issues that are important to our respective missions. We are all passionate advocates on these issues, but it is ultimately up to you to decide for yourselves based on the information presented. For more information on Island Pathways, Transition Salt Spring, and the Salt Spring Island Farmland Trust, please see the web links that Erin Ann has put into the chat. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Brian. And now about the format for tonight's event. all 15 candidates were invited to participate in answering a 7-question survey that we issued to them the day after the candidacy deadline. 11 of the 15 candidates responded to the survey, and many of them chose to be here with us tonight. We informed the candidates that only those who chose to answer the survey could participate in tonight's event. These answers will serve as an important context for tonight's discussion, and we encourage each of you to read their very thoughtful answers that they've spent some time on. And there is a link that Erin Ann has provided for you within that information chat window to those responses. The LCC is a new way to give residents a greater voice. The CRD has delegated a significant number of areas of responsibility to the LCC. You can learn more about what those responsibilities are, along with instructions on how you can participate in this election, by clicking the links Erin Ann has provided in the chat window. We'll start the evening with 2 pre-selected questions that we've shared with the candidates earlier. We will then provide the candidates an opportunity to engage with one another, and then we'll provide all of you watching an opportunity to engage with the candidates. That will be a public Q&A, that part.
Yeah, we're excited. We're very much excited for that. For this first section, Sheila and I will ask each candidate one question. We're going to proceed in alphabetical order by last name. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to respond to each of the 2 questions. You'll see a timer that will be visible to the candidates and to you. That'll be in the upper left hand of a screen that'll be next to the speaker screen. What we're doing is we're spotlighting the speaker, and so you'll see a spotlit timer. It's a bit, it's a high-tech timer with a bit of a low-tech execution, so bear with us. We've asked the candidates to keep an eye on that clock as they're speaking. We are choosing not to interrupt them to warn them that they've reached time. We will, however, be shutting off audio 2 seconds after that time has run out, if they've not already stopped speaking.
Wow.
Now, over to Sheila for that first question.
Okay, candidates, as we've said, we're not surprising you with these first 2. As Brian has said, we'll each giving you 60 seconds to respond to that first question we gave you a while back, which is, why should voters choose you for the LCC? So Erin Ann, please give the timer for 1 minute. And please, candidates, don't start answering until we give you the cue. We're going in alphabetical order. So the first up will be Gail. And we're starting the timer. Just waiting to see the timer. Yes, go now.
Oh, we can't hear you, Gail.
You're on mute, Gail.
Sorry. Hi. Mute.
We
Good.
gotcha.
Sorry. Okay. Can I start again?
Yeah, you need to.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Gonna start me again then.
Yes, here you go. You've got your minute now.
Hi, I'm Gail, and I believe deeply in the promise of the democracy and the transparency that the LCC is going to bring. If elected, I will put my considerable energy to making sure that it does fulfill its promise. I have tenacity. I have patience to successfully navigate the complicated CRD bureaucracy. I have long experience working as a team to accomplish things that a lot of people didn't think could be accomplished. I have strong success in stretching every single dollar as far as possible. I have knowledge of CRD through a decade as a commissioner on Park First and then recently transportation. I have a quirky sense of humor that sometimes finds solutions that nobody else can see, and I work really, really hard. So I hope.
Very good. Very good, Gail. Thank you. And so I think we can go ahead, Gail.
Didn't have a timer. It may have been there, but I certainly didn't see it. So for the next person, you might want to make sure that it's there.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I saw it it's on this blank screen. It's in the corner of the blank screen for reference for the next folks.
Right, there's
So-
Jesse Brown. Okay.
And Jesse Brown is next. And
That's so.
yeah, and if you could, yeah, there's Jesse. So we'll
Sure.
let you know when your timer is ready, Jesse, and then I'll let you know when you can begin. Okay, now
Okay, great.
go for
Thank
it.
you so much for having me here, and to the organizers and to Gail for going first. That's always tough. Yeah, I just want to say, I think what sets me apart from some of the other candidates, actually from all the other candidates, is actually having worked at the CRD. So I think I have that unique perspective where, I've had a history of getting things done as a staff person, working there. And I just want to bring that knowledge specifically around the economic development portfolio that is now under the purview of the LCC. I think I have a lot to offer as a working professional. I really respect the diversity of the candidates that are here. And I think what I can bring is knowledge of, like I said, somebody who's a professional, who's working, who's raising children, and who also has the knowledge of Salt Spring, having grown up here essentially. And I love this island. Thank you.
Well done, Jesse. And next in the lineup we have is Ben Corno.
Yeah, and
So-
before we start, Sheila, one
Yeah.
thing that I might want to point out to the other speakers is that if you have your view in gallery, you may not see the timer. So Gail, you took it for the team on that one. So I'm mentioning that so that
Okay.
folks don't have that situation.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Thank you. So we'll let the timer get started up there, Ben, and then we'll let you know when you can begin. All right. All right, go ahead, Ben.
Hi, my name is Ben Corno. Why should you choose me for the LCC? I'm a kind and transparent person. I'm honest to a fault. I demonstrate a clear and compassionate communication style. I prefer to make friends rather than enemies, and I like to elevate the voices of my teammates. I have a well-developed critical thinking skill, and I'm tirelessly curious. I want to understand how and why I'm doing something before I proceed, and I want to understand the consequences of my decisions before I commit to them. I believe in the potential of this commission to change our perception of our community and our chances of being able to work together. I want to see it work well and prove itself capable of taking on more. I'm energized by meeting with the folks who need the support of our governing bodies, and I'm driven to understand the needs of our community. This is my favorite part of the role, and I look forward to meeting a lot more of the community after the election is finished and the commission is formed. Thanks.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Ben. Well done. All right, next up is Nejma. And Nejma, I will also again just let you know when the timer is going, and then give you a cue of when you could begin. All right. Okay, go.
Oh,
girl.
okay, sweet. Yeah, well, LCC, I never thought I would want to be a politician, but I do hope to change policy. I hope to collaborate and continue collaborating. I think working on the task force with the Peru Islands Trust has been really, yeah, it's really helped me see like just how much can be done together and how important it is to have a diverse voice at the table that can kind of just be a little reminder of like, oh, have we thought of this? Or those that are not speaking up because they're too busy or they're marginalized as well, just to give that kind of diverse representation. I'm also an honor roll student of social work, and I'm continuing on. I've got a diploma, and so my ability to kind of systems think and tinker with a group is actually pretty high when I'm working with a good like-minded group. So that feels like this is just a great opportunity. I see this as kind of exciting. It's in it.
Great. Thank you, Nejma. Yes, thank you so much. Well done. Okay, next up is Jennifer Lannon, and we'll get you spotlighted, and then I'll let you know when your timer is begun. So we will start you now, Jennifer.
Right, I'm Jennifer Lannon. I am a longtime resident of Salt Spring Island, and I have spent a lot of my childhood here and through to graduating high school. I generally really love governance and how I believe governance assists us all in our daily lives and holds us up and works for us. I feel passionately that governmental structures are to be held to the highest regard, and each and every person's well-being depends on that. I believe that this small local level should be highly approachable and accessible to all residents. It is of utmost importance to me that commissioners are able to hear from residents and that resident concerns are brought to the table. I'm here for diversity and inclusion and a family voice. And I look forward to just serving the community to the best of my ability.
Well done. Thank you, Jennifer. All right, next up is Eric Marsh. And Eric, we've got you spotlighted and the timer will begin shortly. You can begin now.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric G. March, and I'm hoping you all vote for me because it's high time we gave our workers more seats at the table. I'm a relatively young worker who knows the trials and tribulations of moving to Salt Spring Island for work. And what I lack in experience, I more than make up for in passion and my willingness to learn what it takes and to get the work done. I've committed to making Salt Spring Island my home. I'm excited to make it a better place. And I'm hoping by the workers of the island kind of seeing workers running that we'll get a few more people out to vote.
Very good. Wow, you win the prize of the shortest, getting your message across. Well done, Eric. Next is Earl Rook. And we'll have you spotlighted, and then the timer, which for some reason is not, there it is. Okay. And we'll just, sorry about that.
Hello, I'm Earl Rook, and I'm running for a seat on the new LCC because I recognize the importance of this election to the future of local government on Salt Spring, and because my education, skills, and experience are a very good fit with what would be required for a successful commissioner. I have 25 years of experience in finance and administration in a large government agency, budgeting, policy development, facilities planning, and project management. I've managed and coordinated decision-making groups with members from all levels of government. I spent over a decade in the private sector as well in operation management and finance of small businesses. I have a master's degree in management. I've volunteered in leadership roles for charities and nonprofit organizations, including several on Salt Spring. As a commissioner, I'd be committed to making the LCC work for this island and its residents. I am committed to transparency in government operations and decision-making. I'm committed to working with other government entities. I will commit the time and effort to make this work. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Earl. And our last but not least is Brian Webster. We'll get you spotlighted there, Brian, and then we'll start a timer on you.
It looks like Brian just dropped out of the call.
Oh.
I'm here.
Oh no, sorry, he's there. Oh, sorry, he's there. I just lost track of him.
Okay, there you are, Brian. And we'll start the timer now. Go.
Thank you. My name is Brian Webster, and I ask you to consider giving me one of your 4 votes for the Local Community Commission because of my experience, my knowledge, my energy, and my values. Experience including 7 years serving on Salt Springs Park and Recreation Commission, 8 years as a consultant working for the Office of the Auditor General for Local Government of BC, and current experience as an active member on the boards of 3 local nonprofits. Knowledge, including the good understanding I have of the services that come under the LCC, and through my experience in writing a discussion paper that was the starting point for the LCC proposal that was approved by voters last fall. Energy and values are just as important, and hopefully I'll have time to talk about them more.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah,
well,
thank you, candidates. That deftly handled, Sheila, and candidates. We made it through the first try with the timer. So thank you for bearing with us.
Yes.
So now to our second question. And a reminder that these questions were provided to all participating candidates ahead of time. I say that because this is a longer question. So we're experiencing first, here's the question, by the way. We're experiencing firsthand in BC and on Salt Spring the results of several escalating climate risks. Government of Canada modeling is now forecasting 1 foot of sea level rise by 2050. Oceans are already up 4 inches since 1990, so that pace is now accelerating. On Salt Spring Island, our biggest climate risks are sea level rise, drying forests, drought impacting our food systems both on and off the island, heavy erosion from increasingly heavy rains, and of course, increasing fire risks. Do we continue with a business as usual approach to developing our economy, or do we begin to transition to an economy that focuses to some extent on climate risk? Describe for us what economic approaches you would encourage and support on our LCC, recognizing these risks to our community. Oh, sorry, I have to say something. Yes. So first up is Gail Baker. So let's just wait. That timer looks like it's queued and ready to go. So can we spotlight? Yeah, excellent. So I don't know if I can see. I'll almost see the timer. I will give you the cue in just a moment, Gail. Actually, Gail, are you seeing it?
I am seeing it.
Go.
Daunting challenges, and not everything is going to happen immediately. And partially you feel like saying, I just can't do anything, but there are things we can do, and there are some things that we can do right away. Electrifying our buses is a very, very real option that should happen within this term. But we also need to build ridership. We need more amenities. We need to do better with bus shelters. How about enhanced routes? How about more convenient schedules, and listening better to our riders and our drivers? So buses and our transit is a big deal. Also, we need to stop the terrible environmental waste of trucking all of our effluent off island. We all know about that and know how much it costs. We need to get that composter up and running so Thrifty and Country Grocer are not taking everything off island, and then when we're paying to bring it back to buy it as compost. So need to do better. We need more rebates for catchment and park. Come on with the roundup, stop that, and start looking also at your forests and some of the fire issues with them. So we can do better.
Thank you, Gail. Thanks for being the first one with that question too. So next up we have Jesse Brown. So can we get Jesse Brown skylit or spotlit? Skylit too would be nice. So we've got everything queued up. So you may proceed, Jesse.
Great. So, I got into politics because of the environment. I ran in 2019 for the Green Party of Canada because I was really concerned about the devastating risk of oil spills throughout the Salish Sea as a result of the purchase of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. So, I put my neck on the line. It's hard being a Green, right now I just will say I'm nonpartisan. I am no longer a member of any political party, but when it comes to bringing these major issues and condensing them into local issues in terms of the economy here in Salt Spring, I really support Southern Gulf Islands Tourism Partnership and their approach to sustainable tourism. Shoulder season tourism is something that we really need to be promoting. Furthermore, I also support all of the local agricultural marketing initiatives that are going on Salt Spring. We need to have a local economy, and we need to be able to support our growers and people producing food here on this island.
Excellent. Thank you, Jesse. Much appreciated. I actually just wanted to stop the clock for a moment and just say that Jenny McLean is back in the room now. So if we can get her back for this question, that would be really, really great. Jenny McLean is one of the candidates, folks, and she dropped out at the initial part of the event. So we have her back. So I will include Jenny in order of our script, but next up we have Ben Corno. We have the timer queued, I believe, so please take it away, Ben.
Though I wish I was, I'm not always a big ideas guy, and I really need to listen to people with experience and knowledge that do understand all of the implications of big decisions like moving a town uphill, electrifying transit system, developing new commercial and residential spaces, or reducing fire risk in community parks. Listening to qualified voices inside and outside of our community for examples of what works and what's feasible is my best guess. When we plan our villages, we need to be considering how our comfortable existence here could go badly and plan away from those weaknesses. Regarding our working budget, I think it's crucial to have value for money being committed to supporting Salt Spring green businesses or reducing the fuel load inside of our parks that surround our villages and throughout the island. The likelihood that fires begin in community parks is high due to the number of people who use them. Lastly, when prudent, I support empowering our local food system by supporting farmers and vendors of local food so that when we need them to step up, we've been supporting them to grow and become capable of making a difference. Thanks.
You packed a lot in there. Thank you, Ben. That's great. So next up we have Nejma. We get Nejma spotlit.
Hey.
Almost there. Just wait a second. Excellent. Okay, we have audio and we almost have a clock, and you may proceed.
Okay, so when it comes to economics, I think that we have definitely, capitalism has been rampant, right? So I have been studying donut economics, if anyone's heard of that, but that's something that we could implement on Salt Spring, where we're actually really seeing ourselves within the donut. And whenever we go in too far or out too far, we're out of balance with our world or with our people. So we have to recognize that we are a part of this world. Humans belong here, and how we interplay with nature is we are a part of this ecosystem. So, and if we can align our economics with that in deeper ways. So this goes with our farming, the way we, build ridership on our bus routes, the way we share what we do have, so we don't need mass products of every sort. It's a bit much, I think. But yeah, I think that donuts. Think the donut.
Not Timbits, right?
No.
Thank you. Thank you, Nejma. So next up we have Jennifer Lannon, and we'll just wait for the spotlighting to happen. Darlene, you're doing an awesome job on the timer. And Jennifer, please proceed.
Thank you. Yes, I looked at this question about making a decision about whether or not you were asking if we need to be, let's see here. Anyway, I decided this wasn't an either or matter to me. I believe that developing the economy is an urgent matter. And by now, the business as usual approach can and should be sustainable and climate minded. If China can build green cities with 40,000 trees and 1 million plants that cover every building, I'm pretty sure that Salt Spring Island should be able to have eco-conscious, potentially net zero housing and business developments. We have such an incredible roster of knowledge, and I believe that there is no denying climate change or the climate crisis. I trust that we have the methods and abilities to develop mindfully with the climate as the focus, and Salt Spring should be a leading example for other small communities. Congestion, I see it all the time with my business in town. I believe one of the best ways we can address this,
Sorry, we had to mute you. You were over time, but that was it. You're right, not an either or question. So thank you very much for that response, Jennifer. Next is we have Eric G. March up. And I'm sorry that mute is
I think Jennifer McLean is next.
Oh. Eric March is on my list. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Yep. So Eric, and I'm sorry about the blunt instrument of the mute, but I wait 2 seconds after the bell goes, we will use it. So definitely keep an eye on that clock. So Eric, we're gonna wait for the clock, and you may proceed, please.
All right. Climate change is real. It's happening, and quite frankly, anyone who thinks we can just continue business as usual is I think a little bit naive. We really need to start shifting economic gears to a more sustainable economy, and we really need to start in ways that support our workers and our vulnerable members of our community. Economic development needs to be taken in sustainable and carbon neutral directions. We need to build bike lanes, pedestrian pathways, and better bus service to really get people out of their cars and lower that carbon footprint. And we need to see about using grants to get people to reduce their impact on the environment, for example, solar panels or rainwater catchment systems.
Great, thank you, Eric. That's excellent. Okay, next to Jenny McLean. Jenny McLean doesn't have her video operating, but I'm hopefully will be.
My video should be operating if you could put me on video, because it says the host has stopped my video. So if the host could try to put on my video, I would really love it.
Yeah, we would all love it. So let's
you can't put it on?
Yeah, just wait a second. We just have to find you. There's a list of 200 and so folks here, so we just have to just locate you. Aaron Ann, please let me know if you have any.
We can't do anything. It's there's no option here.
Weird. Okay. So if we don't have video, Jenny, are you okay proceeding without video?
Yeah, I would prefer video. If you do find you can do something, but if you can't, I'll go ahead. What was your question?
Okay, it's question number 2, which I don't know if I can reread at this point. It was in the email that we sent on the weekend about climate change and about.
Okay, I will start with that. I attended every Transportation Commission meeting between 2013 and 2016, and I did that because I was a non-car driver and I was getting around Salt Spring by using the bus, and it was really difficult, and it was extremely difficult getting in for a delegation to the Transportation Commission. You had to wait at least 2 weeks before you could speak, and you had to be approved, and then you could only speak for a limited time at the beginning of the meeting. Then it wasn't said if you could go back to what you wanted, you had to accept they're taking it under advisement. So there were a lot of barriers for families, and the province took that over with a family travel pass, but I worked very hard to try to get a family travel pass, because at the time it was $225 per child, and that was under the age of 4. So even moms who are out going to town with, say, 2 children, like I was in that position, and the children might not be school age yet, they would spend $6.75 just going from Grantville area to town on a very circuitous route, and $6.75 coming back. So it took years, and it never penetrated locally. It only penetrated through the province. So I think that we have to look at the people who don't have very much money are carrying the lion's share of the burden to solve climate change, because they're not heavy consumers, and try to support those.
We have time now. I don't know if you can see the clock, but the time has run out. So I very much appreciate that, particularly the climate justice message, which is something that we care deeply about. So we'll see if we can investigate the issue. Likely it's on your end, but Aaron Ann is good at this stuff, and we'll make sure that we can try and get you back for the debate. So that ends this section of the.
No, Brian.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's still.
I'm sorry, silly me. Right, thank you.
Yeah, still
Earl. Yeah.
And Brian.
Earl and Brian. Got it. I'm back on script. All right, Earl, please proceed.
Thank you. Yes, the LCC should encourage and support measures to build resiliency to climate change into our local economy, including greater economic diversity with less reliance on seasonal and tourist business, and a broader foundation in farming, healthcare, tech, and the arts. We need to establish environmentally suitable commercial sites for services, light, clean industrial, and studio space with adequate infrastructure support. We need to recognize that our commercial center of Ganges is at high risk from rising sea levels and identify options for ensuring its continued viability. We need to bring local emergency management under the LCC and expand its role in preparing businesses and residents for increasing risk of fire and flood. We should leverage the stormwater management program for enhanced control of runoff and erosion. And finally, we need to bring government and non-governmental players together to resolve our chronic water shortage supply problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Earl, and apologize for almost missing you. Thank you to Sheila for pointing that out. Next up, we have lastly, Brian Webster, who will be the last person to respond to this question. We can pull up Brian Webster's video, and we'll queue up the clock. And just give 1 second, Brian, you may begin.
Thank you. It's tough being at the end of the alphabet, but I've been living with that my whole life. Our new LCC can and must respond to climate risks. 2 examples, we've already talked a little bit about alternative transportation options. Gail talked about our bus system, as did a couple of others. Also, the LCC can and should lobby for faster completion of foot and cycle pathways from Fulford to Ganges to Vesuvius, and perhaps also to Long Harbor. Secondly, we could do more to encourage greater food independence, replacing high carbon imported food with locally grown and produced food just as much as possible. And this will be aided if we can convert the old Ganges Fire Hall into a year-round farmers market.
That's great. Thank you, Brian. And thank you, candidates. Over to you, Sheila.
Yes, that was amazing, you guys. You're doing such a great job, and staying on time and just being so gracious about your answers. A note to our viewers that the recording for tonight's event will be available publicly. We will be sending out to all of you a thank you note along with a link after the event. A note too that the Driftwood has teamed up with the Chamber of Commerce to host an in-person all candidates debate on Tuesday, May 16 from 6:30 to 8:30, and this will be held at the Fulford Hall. This event is free. Before we get going on the second part of tonight's forum, all of you watching will have an opportunity to ask the candidates a question during the third part of our evening. Brian will give you some instructions on how to do that later, but you can start thinking about your questions now. And when you're ready, we'll ask you to start getting them into the chat, just to make sure your own name and the candidate you want to address your question are clear. So for the second part of tonight's event, we're giving the candidates an opportunity to ask a question of a candidate of their choice. We'll open up this question period by asking candidates in reverse alphabetical order for you, Brian Webster, and to select a candidate they'd like to address a question to. The speaking order is posted in the chat window. And here's the timing. It's going to be a little bit more interesting that way. Each candidate has up to 60 seconds to ask the question, and the responding candidate has up to 2 minutes to answer.
Just a correction, Sheila, it's 30 seconds to ask.
I did that before too. My apologies. Each candidate has 30 seconds, a half a minute to ask the question, and the responding candidate has up to 2 minutes to answer. There'll be a 90-second period for open back and forth between the candidates. So, like with the first set of questions, we'll turn off both the audio and video for the questioner and the respondent 2 seconds after the time in that 90-minute back and forth, or the 90-second back and forth. So candidates, please be respectful in your questions and answers. Please also refrain from questions or comments of a personal nature. We will intervene if candidates are veering into areas that create an unsafe environment for the candidates. So let's welcome Brian Webster for the question. And let's not start, make sure that you're all queued up with a spotlight and timer. And then you can start saying your question now.
My question is for Gail Baker. You served as chair of the Transportation Commission. So I'm wondering if you can tell us, if you were elected, what advice or what cautions would you offer to the LCC about our bus system and pathways, sidewalks, bike lanes, and overall concerns about our roads?
Thank you. So Gail, I think you might be muted. Nope. Are you good? You're good? Okay. All right. So the timer is on. You have 2 minutes.
Oh, golly, Brian, it's tough. It's so easy to say we need bike lanes everywhere, and it's really, really difficult because, as you all know, we don't own our roads. So unlike Park that can kind of make some decisions, we have to partner, we have to collaborate, we have to have a good relationship with MOTI. And we've done some of that, but boy, we can do so much better because it's unbelievably difficult. Even bus, we decided to go and change the route and add something, and BC Transit said, no, don't have the money, can't do it. So there are complications. It's difficult. It can be done. But one of the first things that the LCC is going to have an opportunity to do is there are 2 big studies that MOTI has funded. One of them is the safety study on cycling between all the different ferry terminals, and the other one is the Ganges Active Transportation Study. I haven't seen them yet. One of them did come out, but what's going to happen is the LCC, with all the stuff they have to do, is going to get to decide we're going to shelve that, just another study, let's not worry about it? Or are we going to use the MOTI initiative and advocate for some of it? I believe it will talk about reduced speed limits on Fulford Ganges and in Ganges, better road markings, traffic calming. So how committed is this LCC going to be to get these recommendations that came from the ministry actually implemented? So that's exciting. The other thing that I think we can do is we can do better prioritizing. Our area manager, Owen Page, gets over 100 emails a month from Salt Springers, everyone asking for something different. It's real easy to delete when you just don't know where to go. But if we prioritize, if we meet regularly and we get together on those prioritizes, I think that we can work as one and get it done. And we can start by meeting Rob Fleming at Ask Salt Spring in the Lions Hall on June 2nd, because he's coming to Salt Spring to listen to us about roads. So it's a good way to begin. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, so you both now have a 90, that's right, eh, Brian?
Yeah.
It's a 90-second back and forth. So we'll wait for the cue and allow you both to engage with a back and forth. So we'll I'll let you start now. You're
Okay, so
yeah.
Gail, you talked about lobbying MOTI, so the provincial government. How would you actually go about doing that? Little Salt Spring talking to big provincial government.
I would start with Little Salt Spring talking to a little bit bigger area manager who is on Salt Spring every week and has said, please come talk to me. The LCC can help guide me onto what I need to be doing and helping you do. So there is an opening. They would love to have someone to talk to that tells them what Salt Spring wants. Now, obviously, the LCC will have to figure that out and take responsibility if some people don't think that's a good idea, but prioritizing, figuring out what are, let's say, 5 priorities for this year is really important. The second thing is the LCC can meet with Rob Fleming. They can do it on an annual basis. They can find out what's being spent on our roads and talk about what we really need and make sure that we're in concert with that. There is an opening. We are doing great with the ministry. When I was chair of transportation, we talked a lot to them and they started listening. So I know there's this idea that they don't ever listen and they're big bad and they don't, and we won't get everything we need, but we will get a listening. And if we're smart, we'll have a partnership and we can do better together.
Great. Okay, well done, both of you.
All right, thank you. And you do know that you can go back and forth and not, cutting each other off and that kind of thing, but please feel free. If there's an additional question or a follow-up you want to ask, you can feel free to do so. So next up, we have Earl Rook to ask a question. And so same in the first case, I'll repeat it because it's just the second time we're doing it. You got 30 seconds to ask, and then we'll go into a response period of 2 minutes and a discussion of 90 seconds. So don't start the question until we got the timer all ready to go. It looks like we're pretty close to there. Please proceed, Earl.
Okay, my question is for Brian Webster. Brian, in your campaign, you've been talking a lot about services that aren't even on the initial list of LCC responsibilities and the initial mandate. Do you really think we should be talking about this when the LCC is so new and the commissioners might need some time to learn the system before we go delving off into new and different things outside the mandate?
We will restart the clock at 2 minutes for response from Brian. Please proceed.
Thanks, Earl. I think we have to do both. The LCC, of course, has to get up to speed, and it needs to deal with the 14 services that are within its mandate right off the top. However, I think we need to do more than that. There are pressing issues in the community that we need to be dealing with, and we can't wait around for people to get trained. We can't wait around for the first term to pass before talking about some other issues. For example, there are services that are CRD services on Salt Spring right now that were left out of the responsibilities of the LCC, specifically 7 area specific water and sewer services. I think those should be part of the LCC as well, to try to minimize some of the problems like the ones people have heard about with the Fulford water system just recently and over a period of many years. Secondly, I think we need to start discussions with the two major improvement districts on Salt Spring, North Salt Spring Waterworks and the Fire Protection District, because both of them face very serious challenges. They provide really important services, and there may and should be ways that we can work together. And then thirdly, there are additional issues that are emerging or growing importance in the community that also need attention. For example, housing for working people, which is just becoming a larger and larger issue as time goes by. The LCC can do things about that within its current mandate and potentially by also expanding its mandate.
Okay, thank you, Brian, for that response. We're now going to transition to the 90 seconds of open discussion. Again, you folks you're being really polite so far, but please do not cut each other off. Please be kind and respectful, because this conversation allows for a chance for rebuttals or clarifications on the initial question. So please proceed.
You mentioned housing, which is obviously a major issue for us. Would you set that as a priority above some of the other outside the box issues?
Probably yes. I mean, I think we need to be able to multitask. So I don't think we just need to pick one and say that's the issue. However, if I absolutely had to pick one issue and say that's the issue, housing, how can that not be number one? I mean, it's interlinked with lots of other issues, drinking water being a huge one. But I mean, I think we've reached a point where most people on Salt Spring recognize the extent of the problem. And every time ferries are canceled, like they were from Fulford just a week or so ago, people are reminded that we have a really serious problem. We need to do something about it.
You think we'll have much success in moving forward with the various water districts? It seems like a fairly complicated arrangement right now.
Well, it's two different issues, really. There are the existing CRD water systems, and it would be a matter of talking to the commissions that exist right now to see if they prefer sending the recommendations to an LCC or send the recommendations essentially off into space, which is what they're doing right now, which I know they find really frustrating.
Okay, and we're at time. Well done on the timing, gentlemen. So now I'll hand it over to Sheila for the next question.
All right, I think we have Mr. Eric G. Marsh, who will be our next questioner. And
I think it's Jenny.
Yeah, you seem to be missing me.
Oh, I am sorry, Jenny. Yes, we yes, I had crossed you off on this list because you had left the room, but now you're back, and I'm glad you're back.
Yeah, my power went out, and it didn't. I wasn't like leaving the room. My question is for Brian Webster. I note in the May 20th, 2022 Driftwood on the front page, it has an article showing that you wrote the discussion paper to start the LCC. You wrote it together with Linda Adams and Richard Kerr, and you recommended 7-member LCC to be put to the referendum. And also, I wanted to find out what other communities in British Columbia have ever had the LCC. Why are there only 4 people when you recommended 7?
All right, so Brian, we're going to give you 2 minutes to answer that question. And the queue is beginning. I'm not seeing it. There we go. Go ahead. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. And thank you, Jenny, for the question. Yes, I was involved in helping develop the proposal for the LCC, as was Gail Baker. The number of commissioners actually changed a few times during the process. The report that initially went to the advisory committee that was appointed by Gary Holman called for 4 commissioners plus the electoral area director, simply because we were concerned that, that it might not pass if the commission was too big. During the discussions of that advisory commission, it briefly was bumped up to 6 plus 1, and then ended up back at 4 plus 1. And I think it wasn't my decision, but my sense of it was there was just a concern that people might feel it was, going from 1 elected representative from the CRD to 7 might just shock people too much. That was the best reason they came up with. Now, you asked another question. I frankly don't remember what it was in there. Can I get a reminder?
I wanted to know what other towns in British Columbia has this LCC ever worked in?
Right. There is no other community in BC that has ever had an LCC of this type that has a broad range of responsibilities in a substantial sized community. There's a very small number of very small communities that have LCCs with very narrow range of responsibilities. But this is really a first in BC for using the mechanism that's existed in the Local Government Act for a long time.
Okay, so Jenny, you have an opportunity here now to continue your conversation with Brian. We have a 90-second opportunity here that will queue up is now. So please go ahead with your conversation.
So you're saying that it was Gary Holman who chose the 4 instead of the 7 that you recommended?
I think it was the advisory committee that Gary Holman appointed. I served as an expert advisor, I guess, to that committee. I wasn't a member of it. But as I recall, by the time the proposal went to CRD staff in Victoria for them to then develop the bylaws, it by that point had become 4 elected representatives plus the 1. Frankly, just speaking from my own opinion, I was really pleasantly surprised that the referendum passed by a really large majority right up until the election results came in that night. I wasn't at all confident that would be the case. So I understood and respected the choice to be more careful with the numbers initially. As it turns out, I expect probably the broader representation that would have been provided by having 6 instead of 4 probably would not have killed the proposal. And I don't think that would have been a bad thing at all.
When you worked with Linda Adams and Richard Kerr to develop the LCC, were you paid or was that volunteer?
Volunteer, 100%.
Good. Okay, so thank you, Jenny. That was the end of that discourse, and I really appreciate your question and your contributions. And thank you, Brian. Over to you, Brian, for the next person.
Great, and that was an actual back and forth. Thanks, people. So we've got up next is Eric G. March. You're up to ask a question of your choice to the candidate of your choice. We'll set the clock at 90 seconds, starting now.
So 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Geez, what's go ahead.
My question is for Nejma. I'm not familiar with donut economics, but I like the idea of it. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that and maybe some examples of how you see those ideas influencing your time on the LCC if you're elected.
So that's great. Excellent. So over to you, Nejma. You have 2 minutes to give a short course on donut economics.
Nice. Well, okay, starting now. So actually it's being implemented in Amsterdam. The whole city of Amsterdam has taken it on. And basically what it does is it creates, there's like social impact, climate impact. So we want to be in the donut. And then that's where we're in our happy place, where like the economy is booming and our world is good. We're not destroying the environment, and we're not, affecting the drinking water sort of thing on the other side of things. So the people and the planet are cared for. So the way I could see that implemented, and it already is in a lot of ways, Salt Spring has all these great little things. But like looking at the ferry, for instance, so the ferry's coming and all the tourists that are coming, right? And yes, we need the tourism. We want those folks to come over. And then also they're all driving, right? It's like, that would be a good example of how we could implement donut economics to try and find a new solution. So that would be, how do we encourage people to not drive? Do we actually just say, no, you can't at a certain point? Like how far are we willing to go actually for the climate? And I think that, you know, be like, actually, if you want to come to Salt Spring on Saturdays between the first ferry to 5 p.m., you gotta take our cool party bus to town, right? So just kind of finding ways where you actually create something beautiful, fun, engaging, and interactive so that you're actually creating an experience for people so they're getting immersed when they come. So that would be an example of donut economics. So we're realizing how much more traffic, that's all on our roads, it's the impact on roads, air, you know, I mean, I walk up the hill, I know what that is, you know? So those are the ways that we find balance. So you use that kind of as like a measurement. It's like a measurement tool sort of thing. So that would be kind of maybe through the economic development component that we would be doing.
Okay, thank you, both of you. Now we'll transition to an open 90 seconds for open discussion. Just a reminder, please don't cut each other off. I think I'm gonna drop that soon because I think you folks get it. So please proceed with your 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Yeah, what do you think, Eric?
I think that sounds great. Definitely, hopefully whoever's elected, if it's not one of us, kind of takes that on and thinks about it a little bit.
Right on. And, yeah, like what do you do? Like, or I mean, you know, like, because I'm just trying to think, how can we relate it to you know, something that affects you, for instance, or your family here?
I'm a production worker, and I'm mostly a pedestrian on the island. Cycle occasionally, but mostly I walk around.
Right on. Yeah. So do you live like close to the town center? So it's kind of easy. It's like engaging.
I'm about 5K out, so it takes you know, it's a little bit of a hike.
That is a hike, and it's always uphill out of town, right? But imagine there was like a little trolley that you could take up the hill.
Yeah.
You know, to just encourage people, because it's easier to walk down a hill than it is to carry your groceries home or whatever, you know. So so just looking at development. So staying close to town would be a donut economics thing. You'd use a measurement scale. You'd be like, how is this with people and planet? You know, things like that. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that kind of sounds like the last time I house hunted. I was very much like, okay, want to be far enough from town, it's a little bit quiet, but close enough to town that I'm not phoning for a ride all the time.
Right? Yeah.
That's great time, folks. Donut economics is actually being practiced in the city of Nanaimo, I have to say.
No way, really? That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Over to you, Sheila.
Yes. So thank you. We'll continue down the reverse alphabetical order list for our candidates. And we have Jennifer Lannon up next to be the questioner. And we'll give you now your 30 seconds to state your candidate that you wish to question and your question. Go ahead.
I came up with a question for Earl Rook. And that is, do I state it now? Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. You go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. The Community Economic Sustainability Commission presented a detailed report at its Community Economic Forum in March titled Towards Strengthening the SSI Economy, Current Realities and Potential Opportunities. It identified a number of threats and challenges to a diversified and sustainable economy for Salt Spring, including but not limited to housing for workers. How can the LCC use its mandate for sustainable economic development to address some of these issues?
Great, excellent. I'm glad to see our timer relaxed it so that you could finish asking your question. Earl, you have 2 minutes, and we'll wait for the timer to start, and you'll see that coming up here in a minute, and then you can go ahead now. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. I think that report is a really good example of some of the great work that's been done by the volunteer commissions that have been supporting local government on Salt Spring. It's not surprising that they identified worker housing as a major problem. Worker housing is really, to me, a fundamental economic and sustainable economy issue for Salt Spring, and appropriate, therefore, for the LCC to dig into it deeply, because we do have a mandate on the LCC for dealing with economic development issues. And as far as sustainability goes, we have even bigger examples with, like, the hospital. Shortages of worker housing for our medical staff could create a serious problem, and the hospital and our primary care physicians form one of the more fundamental institutions of the community, and without it, we would have a lot of struggles. But the bylaw for the economic development portion of the government does allow for the development of strategies and actually work plans for implementing some of these strategies for dealing with housing. A couple other things mentioned in the report that I think are important. Along with housing, Salt Spring has a lack of commercial and industrial space for the small businesses we need to support a diversified economy. We've got, I think it's 0.2% of our zoned land is zoned commercial and industrial. And we've all seen what happened with Salt Spring Coffee and the struggles of Francis Bread just to try and get a place on the island where they could make a go with their business. Similar problems occur in the arts, where young artists don't have studio space, and in our farming community, where the price of land is just making it terribly difficult for new people to enter.
Very good. Okay, thank you. And now you have both 90 seconds to have an exchange and a conversation. So we'll get that 90-second cue up, and feel free to interface there. Go ahead.
You brought up some interesting things that I didn't actually think you would answer. So that's great. Did you say this 0.2% of commercial? Say that again, could you please?
Yeah, the land area of the island that's zoned currently for commercial and industrial use, according to the report, is only 0.2%. And of course, we have a very large landscape, and that's still a fair amount of land, but we have conflicts on island right now between people who are forced to work from home, and my next door neighbor parks his dump truck at home every night, and we're cool with that because they're great neighbors and that's his livelihood. But I have other friends who are in trouble with their neighbors on a regular basis because they have heavy equipment and they have to work out of their home, and we just don't have spaces. Think too about warehouses, shops for trades, light assembly areas. If we want to develop some really green, sustainable, low impact industry to diversify our economy, we don't really have places for them to do that. And I think that's a problem the LCC can and should look into.
I agree fully. And arts and studio space, those are, hugely important. I can't imagine our town doesn't have this. As I really care for the arts, and I think it's muchly needed. I see the timer.
Yes, great. You've done a great job, Jennifer, and thank you, Earl. This is just fabulous. Over to you, Brian.
That's great. Good discussion, folks. I'm loving this so far. Next up, we have Nejma Moody, who will be our next questioner. And you will have 30 seconds when the clock resets magically, and you may go.
Thank you. Okay, I have a question for Jesse Brown, actually. Thank you so much for all your work with Daisy and making so much happen and everything. And I know that you're like financial driven too. You can kind of see that map. And I saw on your on the website that you're like looking to reevaluate the sim space. So I'm wondering what that looks like to you.
Oh, and yes, we'll
Muted.
transition. Oh, you're muted, and we're going to
Okay,
start.
there we go.
Clock has to
Hey,
be. Yeah, just
hey,
wait.
I just want to. Sorry.
Wait a sec. We're going to get the clock reset for you. You may go now.
Hey, I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity and asking me a question. It's hard as independents, like, to get that space. So, thank you. So I guess I just first of it all would like to say, you know, I'm one of the few candidates that has a website and has ideas put forward publicly. So, so I'm going to be up for a little bit more scrutiny on some of those opinions. You know, it's not necessarily reevaluating, it is evaluating. So, what I would like to do is that what I've noticed at the CRD sometimes is that these larger projects or just projects around spending in general just sort of seem to happen without perhaps the scrutiny that would normally happen at a municipality. And so I think this LCC is a great opportunity to look at some of these projects like grants and aid, like the middle school, and think about maybe what's going well, what's not going well, communicate that to the public and create efficiencies, or, you know, maybe expand. So it's more just taking a microscope to these projects and seeing what's going well, what's going and what we can do better.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jack. I think that sounded like an endpoint. So I will take the opportunity to transition us over to the open discussion. So keep it respectful and clean, and please proceed when the clock starts imminently. Now, go.
Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, so you know what? I totally agree with you. And a little bit of an evaluation would be very helpful. Did you know that paper towels at Sims right now cost $26 a roll? What's
That's
up
wild.
with that? That's wild. Yeah, that's why I was like, thanks. I think I'll get some organic bamboo shipped over from Bali. No, I'm just kidding. But like those are the kinds of pieces that we could look at. And I think that those are just inefficiencies maybe in governance, in planning with staff that we could look at that, you know, so thanks. So
yeah, no, and I really hope that more independent people like yourself are elected, because we can have these conversations without the baggage of a slate or political endorsement. For example, like we could look at where we could purchase maybe locally those type of like towels or things that the center needs, and yeah, really. Yes, and let's support local. So I'm totally down on working at that on those type of issues to save money and support our local economy through CRD projects.
That's awesome. Yeah.
No, yeah. What about you? Why don't you use?
Sorry.
Yeah. So I was going to say we have 25 seconds. Why don't you use the time to talk about your campaign a little bit?
No. I don't want to. Well, I do, but I don't. I want us to like figure these things out, because actually that building is totally underutilized and we could expand on that. I think because we do have it for 5 years, I guess, right? So there is this lease period. So we can make it awesomer. That's all I'm saying.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm down. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, folks. Appreciate that discussion. Over to you, Sheila.
Yes, okay. I think Ben, you are the next in line to be the one to ask the question. So we'll get you spotlighted, and then we will start the timer once that spotlight. There you go. So you'll have 30 seconds to ask your question, state your candidate, and you can start asking that question now. Go for it.
My question is for Nejma. You're somebody who I wanted to learn a lot more about, and I'm really happy that you're running for this LCC spot, because I'm just excited to see you doing more in the community. And I'm wondering if you could highlight a memorable mentor of yours, lessons they might have taught you, and how you see their influence in your own leadership skills when you work with the community.
Wow.
Fantastic question, Ben. Yeah. So Nejma, you've got 2 minutes for that one. So you can go now. Start.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So the first name that came into my head is this woman named Kelsey Ferry. Okay. And she's the tutu fairy. Like I met her at a festival and she taught me how to get to work, and we got to get this stuff done because we're going to go out there and we're going to make some tutus like, you know, so, and she also just taught me this kind of work ethic. And even though she's kind of edgy, she's Australian, she's, you know, she had a place in Whistler throughout the Olympics. Like she was kind of like, you know, she was really good at this kind of creativity and fun. And she knew how to bring people along with her, you know, in this way that was really kind of engaging and really fun. She lives in California now and still connected. But you know, it's kind of like that. Like when I think of the people that really made a difference in my life, are the ones that are like a couple that I know, the Selva and Jonah, who, established and they homesteaded and they worked hard. We've got a couple on island, actually, Aaron and Damien, same sort of energy, this like the family homesteader couple. I was always like this young hippie, like, wow, how are you guys building that? Like, okay, what should I do? Like, so just giving, I just remember just being younger and learning, because I'm a high school dropout. I did drop out when I was young. I was neurodivergent. I wasn't doing well in school. And then I just started learning from a lot of people just in community. So I learned how to farm. I learned how to build, and all of the people. I mean, I guess what the value that I felt the most was like a creative work ethic, and just this kind of like coming along, like, come on, let's go, like time to do it, so that, and I'm still learning too, even on how to mobilize, into that energy and capacity of giving. So I guess I'm still even looking for mentorship too myself, but thank you so much, Ben. Thank you.
Yes, rich conversation here, and you have still 90 seconds for an exchange. So we'll let that timer get started, and you can have a two-way conversation. Go ahead.
Right on.
I guess, well, that was a great answer and kind of exactly what I was looking for. So that's it. Is there anything?
How about you?
Like a memorable mentor of mine?
Yeah.
I always kind of pick the same person. It was a gentleman named Jamie, who I worked for in Edmonton at the first golf course that I worked with. And when I had to take on a leadership role at the farm that we started 8 years ago, he instantly popped into my world. He used a lot of comedy and good humor, I think, to bring a group of 20 people, 25 people together. And he had a real knack for noticing who it was that wasn't the superstar, wasn't outward, was maybe new to the group or just quieter. And he really like used that humor and almost like building up a character for those people in the eyes of the rest of the crew that just introduced me to a way of becoming friends with the people you're working with and the people that you want to inspire, that like, it feels like you're giving away, some power, because you're not asserting this sort of hierarchical structure, but it was there already. I understood his role, but it was this sort of talking to me as if we were friends and other people, and watching him do it and just be so effective that I didn't have to think about it, but it rubbed off really, really well. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Lovely. Lovely. Great conversation. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
a lot.
Yeah,
yes.
thank you.
Over to you, Brian, for the next.
Thanks very much, Sheila, and thank you, Ben and Nejma. Over to Jesse Brown to ask the next question. And again, a reminder, we have 30 seconds to ask that question when the timer pops up. And we're just going to find you amongst the 190, 200 folks that are in the room. There we go. And you may begin with your question now. Oh, and you're on mute. You're on mute. Reset the clock, please, Darlene.
Hi, my question is for Jennifer. You're also running as an independent. We have got the Positively Forward slate that's kind of all the same type of people. We have the LCC Core 4 slate that's all the same type of people. What really stood out to me about you is that you're a mom. And I've always been saying, like, we need more moms involved in politics. So can you explain or describe how being a mom currently is important and will impact your leadership if you're elected?
Oh, wow.
In time.
Okay.
So we'll just wait for the clock, Jennifer. We can get you going, give you your time. You may proceed.
That's a huge question. I guess it's at the heart. My heart and soul is so much of an essence here. I care a lot, and I feel that we need to nurture our community. I think our community has been through a ton. There's polarizing ideas. There's a difference of background. There's socioeconomical issues. And I think we just have to look at all of what we go through with grace and humility. And we have to look to creating, and I hope that we can all do this together, a safe and inclusive environment that we can make some changes through. sorry, I'm kind of sidelined by your question, but yeah, I mean, I get that this is where I am in my life, right? And so I just look to how we can nurture what we have going on. We nurture our environments that's insular and it's very exterior. And I think we just need to be doing our best. I would love to create an environment that is healthy for my children. I would love to create a community that's healthy for my children. So I think it's everything really. I think we need to support families. I think we need to look to how our systems are inclusive of families and how our governance can actually be better assisted by external government bodies. It's a unique place because when you reach out and you start looking, it's not always something that functions perfectly. I'm watching the clock. I don't want to get cut off, but yeah, how being a mother, hey? I mean, it is me. It's fully me right now.
Oh, great. So let's go with that natural flow into some open conversation and dialogue. Just wait for Darlene to reset the clock here.
Yeah, am I muted?
Nope, go ahead.
I just really appreciate what you had to say there. And I think one of the reasons I entered politics is, concern about the climate crisis. I'm a stepdad of a 12 and a 14-year-old. And, I think for everybody here who's attending this event tonight and who as candidates and as the audience, we're all people who get it. That's just something that's always been top of mind is like, what kind of world are our kids going to inherit? So it's nice to see that that's important and clearly on top of mind for you as well. And anything that we can do to work to make Salt Spring more sustainable, I'm on board. What about you?
I'm with you. Yeah. And I think about that all the time, how can the projects that we have all these fabulous groups working on be oriented in order to nurture the next generations coming up. Like, I'm kind of embarrassed to admit, but my children aren't the best bike riders, and I think like we could have better systems in place for them, like better neighborhood and neighborhood type living, and then systems to get them to school without cars and do all kinds of things differently. So yeah, I don't know, there's so much to think about, but yes, I'm here to think for the children for sure.
That's great. Excellent, folks. Have I got a program for you, Jennifer? We have some great stuff in our community on that score that Island Pathways is actually doing. So over to you, Gail. You get the last dish sort of word in reverse alphabetical order. So over to you, Sheila.
Well, I'm just inviting Gail to offer her question. She'll have 30 seconds for her question, and please state your candidate now. Yes, go ahead.
I got really kind of inspired, Jennifer. So this question is for you as well. And it's saying, I love your vision. I love what you're looking at for sustainable family life and climate consciousness. But what, as a local community commissioner, would you do with the services that were under the local commission to kind of make that vision a reality? That's a big question, but just dive in.
Oh, sure. It's huge. Yes. Okay. So
hold on, Jennifer. Let's cue the clock for 2 minutes. I'm glad you're ready to dive in. So go for now.
Yeah, Jesse primed me, I guess. So here we go. Like, I'm kind of ready, I guess. Yeah, when we think to Parks and Recreation, I feel passionately that our town should have some of the best parks. A soccer field, the baseball situations. Like, I believe that they should be really considered here. Like, my family's a big soccer family. My husband's Nigerian, so that would make sense. But yeah, it's quite often that games are canceled and you can't participate within the league. So I really think we need to look at that, because we deserve, like, I think kids need to have the best abilities or the best access there. But yeah, moreover, I actually more so thought about how we can develop some smart neighborhoods and have access and pathways, and have our children just very much growing up in a healthy environment. I think our recycling systems could be looked at to be more inclusive, and I think that I'm kind of derailed here because much of what I actually was considering to say is Jesse brought up. So yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Well, we can actually recalibrate the clock and continue your exchange, because Gail may have some other cues and prompts there for you that can expand this conversation. So let's start that 90-second exchange, and we'll let you get started now.
So Jennifer, park is huge, for families. I can see how that would be. And I assume bike lanes and all that. Anywhere else among the services of CRD that you feel, will make that vision for how you want your family life in the next 10 years to look? So, do we have any other areas that are really kind of high priorities for you?
Well, actually, transportation is huge for me. I'd love to have, less car mobility. I think that's prime. Like, my kids want to do things all the time, and maybe it's not safe. I do encourage my oldest to use the transit as much as possible. Get on that bus. Like, they need the ridership. It's of vital importance. I'd love to see that children have more independence and can get around their towns effectively. I think it's really a beautiful thing. It's important.
Okay. And given the fact that our roads belong to MOTI, how would you see kind of getting some of that? Let's say you wanted a bike lane. What kinds of things would you want the LCC to be doing to try to make that happen?
Maybe a little more maintenance, like to be able to walk and ride effectively. I think that sweeping is of vital importance. I've seen some bad accidents and had some interesting experiences on the road from lack of sweeping.
I got to adopt a highway for you. That's what we need to do.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, that's the conclusion of this section of our questions to candidates and their exchange. And now we're actually going to hear from you. And Brian is going to explain how this portion of the evening is going to work.
Thanks, Sheila. I love when this evening is turning out way differently than I thought, and I quite like it, actually. I think we were prepared with the hammer to come down on everybody, but we haven't needed to use that. So I really thank my neighbors who are candidates on this island. You're all neighbors of mine and ours, and I appreciate your grace and your patience with one another. But now let's turn it over to you, our viewers. We got 180 some odd of you, and I know several of you are doubled up, tripled up on couches. So we've got a good audience here, lots of brain power out there. So it's your turn to ask the questions. There's a chat window we pointed out at the bottom. I hope you've been studiously taking down all those wonderful links that are there. We will be sending, they'll be part of the resources we'll send later. And our small and mighty team is going to be trawling that mine of beautiful questions. But before you start clacking away with your questions, here are just a couple of rules just to keep it easy and sane for us. So please make sure that your Zoom window has a name on it that matches your own. And if it doesn't, a lot of people don't. If it doesn't match yours, just please start up by writing your name in there so we know, it's like so-and-so is asking a question to so-and-so. Just make sure that it's super clear in that respect. Make sure that your question is simple enough and clean enough to be read publicly. In other words, no rants. Questioners who do not state their full names won't be chosen, nor will any content that doesn't have a clear question. Just save that stuff for the driftwood, for the op-ed pages or social media. So we're going to select those questions based on things like clarity, concision, variety, with a preference for questions that address topics like transportation, food security, agriculture, climate action, ecosystem health, like our forests and our waters, affordable housing, of course, governance, candidate experience, and of course, a sustainable island economy. I think, I haven't even looked at the time, we've got a half hour for this section, and we don't have to use all of it. If things lag, we'll just let it all go, but we've got a little bit more time than we originally thought. We thought we'd have 20 minutes. So candidates, once they're asked a question, the timer will show up again, and you'll have 90 seconds to address that question. There won't be a rebuttal with the member from the public. So it's just an additional opportunity for folks in the public, the voters, to ask questions of our candidates. So Sheila, do you have a question for us yet?
Well, I'm actually seeing one with the questioner has named herself and she's requested an answer from a certain candidate, which is one of our requests from everyone. So I'm going to go ahead with this one. Yale Wand is asking Brian Webster, what do you feel is the role of LCC in supporting local artists and artist organizations? If elected, how will you advocate for a vibrant Salt Spring Island arts community?
We'll just cue up that clock. Oh, I see the clock up there, but it's not part of the spotlight. I think Erin is trying to catch up to a new part. We've got a new thing going on here with this open Q&A, so just bear with us. Please go ahead, Brian.
Thanks. That's a great question. And the topic of the arts has been touched on just briefly thus far, talking about lack of studio space. And in a kind of an indirect way, I guess, that relates to one thing that the LCC can definitely do. And that's because the LCC, through the Parks and Recreation services that are under its purview, essentially controls the use of the Sims building, which has made a kind of a pretty magical transformation through the sad loss of a middle school into the very strongly community building addition of a community center, where there's a place for the arts and there can be more of a place there in the future. So that's one thing. Beyond that, with the economic development, economic sustainability responsibilities of the LCC, it's pretty hard to look at a sustainable future for Salt Spring and not see a central role for the arts in that. It's a big part of what Salt Spring is all about, has been for a very long time, and we need to be cognizant of that and not just expect it to happen, but consciously look for opportunities to enhance it. I'm sorry if that's too vague, but it's got to be a priority.
That's great. Time. Awesome. Thank you, Brian. So we have one from Susan Hannon. There are a lot of questions flooding in, so just let me get back to that one. Where is it now? Oh, I lost it. Just a sec. Susan Hannon's asking a question about to Earl. There we go. The question is to Earl. Several people brought up fire risk in our forests, private, crown land, and nature reserves. How can the LCC influence this? Over to you, Earl. The clock will start now. And you just have to unmute yourself. Actually, can you restart the clock, please, Darlene? And...
Well, thank you. We definitely have a serious fire risk problem on Salt Spring that's only getting exacerbated by the effects of climate change. I'm a pod leader for our area of the island, and I work with the emergency management folks, and it's something we really have to be concerned about. In terms of what the LCC can do with it, we have management of forest lands that are owned through the parks system. We need to make every effort that we preserve our natural forest systems and our watersheds. A healthy forest is important for providing some resistance to fire, and it's much more resistant than a second growth forest, much less a second growth forest that's full of invasives that are full of resins like Scotch broom and gorse. The other thing that the LCC can do on the other side of the question is to get more involvement with emergency management, so we can get education out towards homeowners and businesses to prepare themselves both for preventing a wildfire near their homes and businesses, but also knowing how to respond in the event of wildfire. Currently, the emergency management program is not technically under the purview of the LCC at the present time, but I'm thinking that's something we should look at expanding into so we have a more cohesive approach to emergencies and disasters on the island.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Earl. Interesting. And thank you for the question. And we may forget to mention the name again on the questioner, but Susan Hannon, thank you for that. Sheila, any ideas who you want to go to next?
Well, yes, actually, I've got a great one here that from Lori Waters is revised for a single candidate. So I guess anyone who wants to jump in. This is her question. I live in Ganges, and as a family caregiver, one community service that I see as unfortunately really lacking as a regular community exercise program is for senior citizens. My question, now she has directed it to Brian Webster, how could the LCC help facilitate a sustainable program of this nature?
Thanks for that question as well. You know, I think we can actually look at some positives from the recent past. It was kind of funny to go through the whole process of developing the proposal for the LCC and then campaign for its approval. There's a tendency to look at the current situation and the recent past as being, oh, bad and horrible, and we have to fix it and make it better. When in fact, a lot of progress in the areas of parks and recreation has happened, most of it positive in recent years, and one of them has been a very significant expansion of the recreation programs, including some directly delivered by Parks and Recreation, and many more delivered by community members and community groups, coordinated by registration handled by Park. So I think, you know, the answer to the question is a combination of an opportunity for community members to create programs and deliver them in concert with the LCC Park. And secondly, it's totally fair game to raise a question like that. There's a recreation programmer, there's a Parks and Recreation manager, and I'd be happy to engage, if elected or even if not elected, with those folks to say, hey, how about this? There's a interest in the community out there. Can we develop such a program?
Great, thank you very much. We have just a note to Aaron Ann. Jesse was saying that his video has blacked out and that the host needs to reset his video. So just to make sure his video will be available should he have a question directed at him. But my question is for Ben Corno from Pam Tar. The question is, how do we grow more than 4% of the food we eat on the island? And what are the consequences if we don't? Interesting question. We'll get the timer going. And over to you, Ben, now. Please go.
I take it that the question is saying, how is it that we only grow 4% of the food that we consume on island? And I would have to say it is largely related to the challenges associated with growing food on Salt Spring or anywhere. Access to land is relatively expensive, and if not expensive, it's investment heavy in order to take your own rented or leased space and turn it into agricultural land. On top of that, you're getting into tenancy agreements. It's really not very easy for someone to do that. On top of that, materials costs are constantly increasing. That was probably the largest, that and also staffing. So staffing and materials making this actually just like not a very good economic adventure for a person to get into. That would be my biggest reason for why it's not happening. How it could be happening would be by intentionally focusing on making access to land easier for people who do want to farm, finding any way possible to bring more materials onto Salt Spring Island in a co-op fashion, so purchased by a larger group and sold on island, so like not having to go to Vancouver Island to get 8 bags of something because there's 300 of them here that you've already pre-purchased. Those would be 2 really simple ways to make that easier. Yeah, that's my feeling. I also think that we need to think about what does local food mean to us. I think that we need to start seeing Vancouver Island and even closer proximities to us as local food, because other regions don't try to exclude everybody 20 kilometers out from themselves from the definition of local. So.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben. Sheila, you got one there on the crab trap for us?
Well, I'm not quite sure why I'm not really seeing a lot of questions, but this one here is a question to any candidate or all. Are you satisfied with how Centennial Park, I think that's the name of the park downtown, this questioner asks, and I believe this is the one that she's referring to. Are you satisfied with how Centennial Park is managed? Is it sufficiently accessible, welcoming, and safe? And if not, what role might the LCC take to make it better? Any candidate can answer. So who would like to go forward with that?
One of the problems that we have in Ganges is the lack of washrooms.
Okay, was that Jen McLean? Yeah. Yeah, you got your video back. Awesome. Let's start the clock. Let's get you back right to the beginning. Roll back tape and go.
One of the problems that we have in Ganges is the lack of washrooms, and the pressure falls on 3 businesses in town to provide some help with their washrooms for everybody who comes through, whether they're local or tourists. And it needs to be that we can open up that washroom that was built in Centennial Park. $800,000 washroom needs to be open, and it needs supervision. We could use maybe a caretaker who would have something that would reward them for a position of hosing out the bathroom, opening it, closing it, keeping track. They do that in the parks in Vancouver. Most parks in Vancouver have a live-in caretaker. So we need to think outside the box. I've been to many meetings where Centennial Park is on the agenda in all different ways, but I'll let other people speak there.
Hey, thank you, Jenny. Nice to see you back. Glad you got the video working. Thank you. So we have a question addressed to Earl Rook. And if we can get him up on the screen. And it's a bit cryptic, so I'm doing a bit of interpretation here. It's from Jen Wright, and she says, what is the reason for the question is we have 2 layers of government already. So maybe it's a request to explain the 2 layers of government we have. Why is that? Oh, and just we'll let the clock start. Go.
Well, I think if we are referring to 2 layers of government, may well refer to the distinction between the Islands Trust and their authority over land use planning in general, and the CRD with its authority over primarily government delivery of services. The LCC is not so much another layer, but it's just bringing some of the decision-making of the CRD closer to the voters and the residents of Salt Spring, supplementing our single director with 4 more people to provide attention to the issues, 4 more people to dig into the budgets, and to make sure that services are delivered adequately. I think this approach is going to make a lot of sense for us going forward, as we get some qualified people on the LCC who can actually interface with the community and take the concerns and interests of the community, incorporate that into budget decisions and operation decisions for service delivery, and be the face of the community here on the ground, rather than letting decisions continue to be made for us in Victoria by unelected public employees. So I think that's sort of what we're getting at. I think that's, rather than an additional layer of government, we're talking about better government.
Okay, thank you, Earl, for that answer, and thank you to the questioner. Sheila, you got one for us?
Yes, I've actually got a question here for Ben. And the question is, do you think the LCC can improve coordination of servicing and land use planning with the Islands Trust? And if so, how? So very related to the previous question.
I guess, how could it improve it?
Improve the coordination, yeah.
Improve the coordination, I guess, by putting a really strong impetus on those collaboration, so accountability associated with elected officials is important. Also, I think creating opportunities inherently out of this creation of the LCC to I guess like have meetings that are specific to discussing how that can happen. So I guess I just mean creating a relationship after this LCC experience has been created. And then I guess also it feels like it will be necessary related to things such as like island pathways and Ganji Village Plan. I think these are going to be opportunities for the LCC and the Islands Trust to cooperate and collaborate and start creating a language and relationship together. So yeah, I guess for me, it will just become a part of the operating experience of the LCC. I think it would be one of the first emails I would send would be, hello, elected official here. I think we need to start talking. And also, if we are able to bring the affordable housing piece onto Salt Spring Island, I guess that would also create a really strong relationship as well. So.
Excellent. Good, thank you. Thank you, Ben. And I think I'm going to hand it over to you, Brian. Have you got a question handy there?
Yeah, I do. Paul, I'm pronouncing your name right, McElroy, to Brian Webster. The question reads, I've heard lots of great ideas, but still have no concept of how the LCC will actually emphasize, all caps, get anything done besides try to persuade the CRD or ministry to oblige. Isn't this just another talking shop? And we will start the clock now.
No, it's not. That's the good news. The Capital Regional District Board passed a bylaw that gives full administrative authority to the LCC over 11 specific, clearly defined services, including parks and recreation, transportation, economic development, sustainability, etc., and a bunch of others. For those services, the LCC will discuss and decide through a vote what the decisions will be on priorities, on policies, what are the projects that should proceed, in what order, that sort of thing. And its decisions are final. The only matters that have to go to Victoria are the final sign off on bylaws, including the annual budget bylaw. So the current world where the electoral area director essentially got advice from a whole bunch of advisory commissions and then went to Victoria with whatever their good or not so good judgment indicated, that essentially ends for those services. There's more to do for it to work better. I mentioned earlier, there are some services that were left out. There are some services that maybe should exist but don't, but it's a big step forward.
Okay, thank you, Brian, for that question. Over to you, Sheila.
Okay, well, I've got one from Mina Lee, and this is to Earl Rook and Brian Webster. Do you ever take the bus? To all the candidates, who of you takes the bus? See, Gail's hand is up.
I do.
Brian's, Jenny's. I'm looking through. I've got Eric's hand up. Okay.
Yep. It looks like everyone does, Mina Lee, so that's good news. Good news. Over to you, Brian. How about a question?
Sure. My question is, no, this one from Jim Allen. There we go. Kudos to the candidates committing to improving the community of Salt Spring, but my question to candidates, and it's a broad one, I'd actually know, he qualified, it's to Earl Rook. My question to candidates is, what is your reflection on the fact that there are only 180 listeners, plus other people on the couch, don't forget that, on this Zoom? So that's to Earl Rook. It's a question about engagement. We got Earl up on the screen, and we'll start the clock now.
Thanks for the question, Jim. I think it gets to be a struggle to reach out to the community on anything. And I'm actually heartened by the number of people we have here tonight. I think that's a good expression of interest but any of us who are running, and any of us who care about the community need to recognize that we have to use multiple methods to reach out to people. I spent most of the day at the Country Grocer parking lot talking to people, which is why I look so sunburned. I wasn't thinking about a hat when I went in. But yeah, we need to be active in all respects, social media, using the exchange, the driftwood, opinion pieces, even on issues which I think are really important, like this one. It is a struggle to get out to people. That doesn't mean that I'm disappointed. I think we are still going to move forward and have a successful election. I think there's a lot of interest in the community for the LCC. And I think the people here tonight will take their thoughts and opinions home, talk to their friends, talk to their neighbors, like you're my neighbor. And I think we can develop something that's really going to be productive for the island in the long run. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Earl. Over to you, Sheila.
Yeah, I've got a great question here from Elizabeth Fitzsalem that's for Nejma. So we'll get Nejma spotlighted here. And here is the question. You've done a lot to raise the profile and meet the needs of some of our most vulnerable community members. What have your recent experiences with the Warming Space, Housing Advisory Committee, and Art Space taught you that would inform your approach to being a commissioner?
Wow, Elizabeth. Okay, so the clock is ticking. Definitely there's a lot of deep work to do in collaboration and in how we deal with crisis and how we manage the issues and continue to kind of always kind of bring everybody back into the fold when it's, you know, when things get a little too much. What I realized is that it's going to take a lot of hands and feet and hearts to get anything done in communities. So the best thing that we can always do is to kind of keep calling out to the organizations that are already implementing, or that they've already got this infrastructure built. They get funding specifically for specific, you know, things like outreach downtown, for instance, right? So realizing that while I was filling a gap in that way, without like the stronger infrastructure around it, it's really hard to hold, you know? And I feel like even our housing task force, we came up to the fact that they, something happened, there was like a little bit of a blip in the budget and we weren't at it. So if we don't have that infrastructure around us, we can't do our work. So does that kind of answer? But, oh, sorry, my glasses. Okay, I did have 4 more seconds, sorry. Oops, I could have capped that, but.
You did great, Nejma.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
over to you, Brian.
Yeah, I just lost my question. It was another one for Ben Corno. You have one handy? Oh yeah, no, I lost it.
Well, there's one here from Peter Mayer, and it's a question for Earl Rook.
Go for it.
Okay, are we, okay, there's been a bit of a discussion regarding air quality on Salt Spring Island and addressing this through better wood stove practices. However, no one has addressed the issue of yard waste and slash burning, which are significant contributors to poor air quality in Salt Spring Island. How can this be addressed? Okay, so go for it.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I think I understand your question. Living with the constant smoke of the last minute fires in the spring when people are trying to burn up their yard waste and other not legal burnables that end up in the pile with them. I'm not sure what the exact jurisdiction of the LCC would be on this, but I think we can certainly take an active role in encouraging, from a public health standpoint, the need to reduce particulate matter in the air. From an environmental standpoint, we are better off actually chipping the material and leaving it on the ground than turning it into carbonized bits that are floating around into our lungs. And I think that that's something that we could certainly advocate for. We do not in the LCC have the authority to actually make bylaws. That's retained by the CRD itself. But we could certainly look at advocating for changes in the bylaws. That's something that the LCC is going to have to look at on a number of issues with the CRD and also, frankly, with the Islands Trust, where we may not have actual jurisdiction in an area, but we can use the bully pulpit, as they say, and our gravitas politically as an elected body to say, this is what we think you should consider doing for the best interests of the island.
Great.
Great. I've got actually finally found there are a lot of questions here, folks. So the question is for Ben Corno. Oh God, why did it disappear again? Good Lord, what's going on with my screen? Apologies. Flat-footed. Yeah, I'm sorry. I disappeared again. And a lot of the questions we're getting are actually not to a particular candidate. So we have one to Jennifer Lannon. If we can spotlight Jennifer Lannon. And the question is, you referred to Salt Spring as a town. Can you explain the provincial definition of a town and how does Salt Spring Island qualify? That's from Leanne Milne.
I don't know that I can define that, but I think it's certainly not a city. The city would be urban and town to me seems rural. Although of course I know that there are like there's a designation within the CRD, there's a definition that, you know, this is essentially in essence a little bit urban because it's of course connected to the CRD, but yes, I call it a town. I think I always have. And you know, it's not a city, and I think that cities would never get away with being unincorporated. Not that that's, you know, not that I have to have opinions about incorporation here, but yeah, I don't know the exact definition, but I'll look that up.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Over to you, Sheila.
Well, I'm not seeing any new questions, so I'm gonna throw that back at you, Brian.
Sure. There's one question from, I might take some interpretation. It was collected on someone's iPhone. So forgive me, Ryan, if I misinterpret your question. It's one for Gail Baker. For the sake of transparency, Ryan writes, should candidates' bylaw complaint records be released to the public? From Ryan. I don't think I could answer that question, but over to you starting now, Gail.
Ooh, yes, I know.
Brian Steele.
Okay, thank you. I believe there's confidentiality. I believe there are plenty of laws around complaints. I am 98% sure that if someone complains, the person they complain against does not know where the complaint came from. So to be released to the public sounds to me, without having a lot of data, and I haven't done a lot of research on it, sounds to me like something that would not be allowed, and it would be taking away from the freedoms of individuals. So I did come from a community where every single week they put everyone that was picked up by the police that week, and that was the first thing anyone read in the newspaper. So I do recognize that there are certain places that do publish a lot of that. And I know this isn't a very good question, and I will find an answer for you, but I don't believe in BC or in CRD the list of all complaints, whether they're by whom they are or against whom they are publicly released. It's the best I can do. Sorry.
Thank you, Gail. Yeah, it's difficult sometimes when you don't have the context, but I think that actually is all the time we have for this third and final section of the evening. Really thank everyone for the questions. We couldn't get to all of them, and I apologize for that. And we were both, you could see us struggling to keep up. So I apologize that. So over to you, Sheila, to take us around the last corner.
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for your very informed and respectful questions and answers. We're at the end of tonight's forum, and I would first of all like to sincerely thank all of the candidates who came tonight to participate. We recognized it's a lot of pressure, and thank you for your contributions to the health and well-being of our community and the ecosystems we all depend on. I would like to also thank all of you out there in the digital world for coming tonight. And I am told that this broadcast is one of the largest ones that Transition Salt Spring has hosted. So on behalf of Island Pathways, the Farmland Trust, and thanks to Transition Salt Spring for producing tonight's co-hosted event.
Yeah, it's been fun, Sheila, and I thank you for putting up with me and my ways. So it's been fun. And folks, before you go, we wanted to remind you that we'll be sending each of you an email with a link to the recording of this evening's forum once we get it posted, along with some additional resources like some of the links you saw in the chat that came up that might have gone by pretty quickly tonight. Hopefully all of those resources together will help you make up your minds on the up to 4 candidates. I don't think you have to vote for 4, but you get up to 4 choices. So please do share that with your friends and neighbors. That's how we get beyond the numbers we have in front of us. So Island Pathways, the Farmland Trust, and Transition Salt Spring will be continuing to post to social media and to our mailing list in the days leading up to the election, which is on Saturday, May 27th. Please be sure to vote then or at the advanced polls. Erin Ann has a link in the chat window with links on how you can vote and who qualifies. I also want to thank our partners, particularly Sheila Adobe, co-chair of the Farmland Trust, Bob Mackay, president of Island Pathways. Tackling big issues before us, like climate change, particularly in a rural jurisdiction, requires more of the kind of collaboration each of our 3 groups are increasingly doing together. To support our work, please visit the home pages or the web pages posted in the chat window. Hosting an event like tonight's forum costs money, particularly for a group of the size we had registered. Please consider making a donation to cover these costs and ongoing donations to support the important initiatives that each of our organizations are leading, like the new Root Food Hub, spearheaded by the Farmland Trust. You can also support Transition Salt Spring's work in the forests and the community presentations we're launching on how we can all get better prepared for the climate risks we're facing. You can also support our joint work with our friends at Island Pathways to support better, safer cycling along our roads on Salt Spring.
Great, thanks. That's right, Brian, and thank you for that pitch for the Farmland Trust. I appreciate that. We need your support to represent these issues in our community. If you're not already a regular donor, please consider becoming monthly supporters. It's easy. We'd be grateful to put your money to work, and thank you for your to our existing donors for supporting the work each of our organizations do every day for a better Salt Spring. A final thanks to Erin Ann Harper backstage, making magic happen, and for managing the registration, our executive director, Darlene Gage, and Kelda Logan, our treasurer, for helping us manage timing, traffic tonight, and a really big thank you to Natasha Kong for the amazing public communications posts and stories she produced to tell you all about tonight. So on behalf of all of us, we'd like to wish you, all the candidates, all the best in these final weeks. Remember to breathe and eat well and exercise. And it's just been such an honor to serve you and to think of you as serving us as representatives. And thank you to the voters that are here tonight. Everyone watching, thank you and good night.
Thank you, candidates. Great job.
Great job.
Good night, everyone.